A lot of times when we think about favoritism, we kind of think of it in a negative way, but did you know that God actually designed favoritism to open up doors of greater blessing in our lives? Today we're going to take a look at it and how we can keep our hearts right so that God can keep blessing us.
Well, Beck, coming from my many, many years of experience in family and ministry, I see that there's an element where God will do so much more in our lives if we are able to increase, what would you say, our capacity to allow Him to do things in our lives and in other lives that aren't all the same. And sometimes He's going to do some very special things in that life over there. And if I'll have the capacity to allow that, especially as a leader, then we can see people grow into places and into influence that is just above and beyond. And I think it's definitely one of the amazing aspects of family, right, or benefits of family, is that we can really, really, from the bottom of our hearts, rejoice when somebody does well. Right? We can really be excited about watching somebody else do well. The opposite of that is the idea that everything has to be fair and even, because people will want you to struggle with that. So I wanted to ask you about that. If you how it is working with your dad and with Paul, your husband, in the ministry, and do you sense any of that kind of stuff?
It really is a spiritual thing.
Right.
It's not, for me, if I sense those things, I go in my prayer closet and bind it in Jesus' name. But there's that natural thing that you also have to work out, right? So with me and my dad, I don't know how to. They don't give us privileges. Like for me, I feel like my parents don't give us privileges. They look at us just like you guys. They look at all of us, all our pastors, all their sons and daughters, the same. And if there's that person that's feeling that way, that's his problem. So I'm very grateful that my parents, outside of ministry, they treat us so well. But inside of ministry, you have to go climb the same ladder. And that's a good thing, right? And it teaches us not to be entitled. Teaches us not just to be humble, to serve in whatever way we can. And we understand that it's not our parents or our leaders who promote us, but it's God. So, you know, if God brings you to that position, it wasn't out of because you had a good relationship or you were close to the leader, but it was God who put that impression in the heart of your leader, whether it would be your natural daughter or your spiritual daughter. It's God.
It's one of the greatest things in my life is watching all of you guys grow up. You know, in the El Shaddai home, right? 33 kids or whatever, 4 redheads and all the other 27 or whatever, red ants and the black ants. When we first came, you know, with the idea, come to Thailand, with the idea of starting a children's home, we had a lot of people advise us. You've got to be very, very careful that you treat everybody fairly, that you don't treat your own kids better than you treat, you know, that kind of thing. Even coming over on the plane, you know, our first trip over, I'm thinking about, like, how are we going to do that? Well, we got here and we found out that everybody isn't the same. Every situation isn't the same. And that we had to incorporate an allowance for what's going to happen. And one of the first things was, okay, we got 33 kids, but every time we go back to Canada, the 4 redheads are going with us. And everybody else is staying in Thailand for the first number of years anyway, right? And so, like, it's not going to be the same. And I think there's a real, not only a freedom in that, but an opportunity for tremendous growth. When we look at our brothers and sisters, pastor of another church down the road, whatever it may be, in the other country, what they're doing things differently than we are, and really allowing for that favor of God to come on them in a way that He wants to bless them.
I think sometimes the enemy can use this as a thing to start to just kind of bring division and offense in our lives. And it's not because we don't want to see other people blessed. We all love it when we see other people move ahead. But the problem comes when we feel like we're being left behind. Right, so
Yeah.
the issue a lot of times of feeling like there are people in ministry that are more special than others, or people that have more favor than others, or people who get more opportunities, more blessing than others. The problem isn't that they're getting blessed. The problem is we feel like we're left behind. So a lot of times we want to put the pressure on the leaders and everybody else around us to create the conditions so everything is even.
Right. Yeah.
When the thing that God wants to deal with is our own heart.
God is putting you in like a cocoon,
Right.
a place where you grow,
Yeah.
and you mature. It's God hiding you or putting
Yeah,
you
yeah.
in one place because He's preparing for. It's always for preparation. It's
Sure,
always
sure.
for something ahead.
Yeah.
So if you might not see it now, but in the long run, you'll see the benefit of just being faithful
Right.
where you are, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't see it
Yeah.
as being held back.
If I give enough time and if I can focus on what God calls me, when we deal with this perception of favoritism, it's a staying humble and being faithful on what God calls. So if I'm just seeing, okay, my leader is showing favoritism in that, when that thought is coming, it's a better to look inside, inward focus, because it can actually a great tool for us to see ourselves inside. Because am I focusing on what God calls, or am I focusing on what I want?
Are you going to be able to guard your own attitude, your own, when you're believing God for something, for support or for a vehicle or whatever, and then the person next to you gets blessed and you feel like, why am I always the person on the outside? That question of why am I the person on the outside is the thing that we have to deal with, right?
Right.
None of us are on the outside.
Right.
Every one of us is on the inside.
yeah.
And if you don't have the breakthrough or the miracle or the whatever it is that you're believing God for, don't get discouraged because somebody
Yeah.
else has it. It just means it's your time to keep pressing in. You just haven't
Yeah.
gotten yours yet.
Well, I think that's part of my breakthrough
Right.
is to rejoice when somebody else gets their
Yes.
breakthrough.
It is a privilege to serve others and help others to win. So when we are dealing about this favor or favoritism, and I think one of the things that we regularly speak a lot in reason without reason is let people win, let people win, let people win. So if they can win, we win, and we win, they win, we all win.
James talked about it when he talked about, you bring two people into the church, the rich man, and you tell him to sit on the front row and, here, there. And then he says, don't be like a respecter, right? Or favoritism basically
Right.
is the word that comes out of that.
Yeah.
And, but when you look at that, the favoritism was simply, I'm going to treat this guy one way and treat this guy another way because I think I'm going to get something special from him.
Yes.
There's some personal
Benefit.
benefit
Yeah.
to treating him special. That's what it was about. It
Yeah.
wasn't about trying to make everybody even Steven, right?
Yeah.
Because if I'm always blaming you or my leader or my mummy or brother, it's just like you are showing so much favoritism. Just like I'm fighting something that for myself, like personal gain.
We're not doing this for personal benefit. Everything that we do, if we're going to do it like Jesus, we're going to do it for the benefit of others.
Yeah, that's right.
And then we get blessed. That's where
Yeah.
the big blessing.
So it comes back to us usually is like am I looking for my personal gain or am I working on inside?
So I think one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is just to give people a level of permission to, especially as leaders and people that work in ministry, not everybody that comes into your ministry is going to be the same, just like your kids,
Right.
and you're not going to treat them all the same. You even look at the parable that Jesus gave of the talents. One started with one
Right.
with two, one with five,
Right.
each according to his ability. So you're not giving everybody each according to the fact that they're all human and they're standing in front of you. It's each according to his ability. And I think sometimes as leaders, we're afraid to make decisions or we're afraid to move ahead in certain ways because of the criticism that we get that,
Right.
maybe you're doing this because of favoritism or whatever. When you have to be free as a leader to make the decisions that you need to make, the same way that you need to be free as a parent to discipline your kids. One kid, spankings may work. Another kid,
That's so
spankings
true.
doesn't work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Another
right.
kid, maybe you need grounding. Another kid, it's something totally different. So you have to have freedom to move as a leader and make decisions and give responsibilities and do all of those things without fear of displeasing the opinion or the view of,
Right.
you know, everybody
Yeah.
else.
The reason that we can grow, I mean, you think about this. Your dad figured that Becky's message at Summit was kind of one of the key ones for what was on his heart. And then there was a lot of feedback that came out of that. You know, like Pastor Matt Funk, he said that too. You know, he said, "Man, I've never seen like the Father's heart in the house before like this. You know, like everybody is so close, and there's so many like memes have come out and quotes and all that kind of stuff from all over the place. And when people look at Becky, and it didn't start out that way, of course, but there's such a respect for her, right? Like I'm actually thrilled the way that the other ladies and men in the ministry that are really her peers, but yet they have such a respect for the gift that's in her, and there's nothing that stands in the way. And because of that, we're able to grow the ministry, because if anybody has the culture Becky has, right, she really does have my heart.
Yes.
And she is able to build that respect through, I mean, it's a lot of hard work and sacrifice, definitely, but it pulls other people into that culture and that heart, and they feel comfortable and they feel connected, right? And they feel like that, and we promote that whole idea, you know, the adoption. You don't have to be blood-born to be a son or a daughter, and it's, you know, just talking to Pastor U this morning, and that guy is such a son, you know, like he's a real son, and Renee is a real daughter, and all of them across there. But my point is that with that, in that relationship that I have with Becky, and the strength that she has in the culture and the heart, that we're able to bring more and more and more people in, and it influences out and further, right? Without her, without Swan, without Sami, without, you know, the closer, and without Renee, Chris and Tab, those guys, we wouldn't be able to draw more people in, because there was no way for them to catch the Father's heart. That a lot of people will catch the Father's heart through the Father's children, you know, and I see that with you and Paul as well. That there's a lot of people that you can influence the culture in VCA, probably like nobody else can, because of that, you know, that you have your dad's heart, like in your mom's heart, like there's no, right? If anybody does, you do. And so that's kind of my point, is that I really, really would like to encourage you and Paul to, I don't know what's next for you guys, but I believe that God wants to move you into a place of greater global influence as far as VCA goes, right? A place of more influence in all of the realms, like in because when people see you and your parents working together, now they know how to work together with the parents as well. So I'd just really like to encourage you, and Paul as well, like just be bold, man, like just go for it. I think God has something big and great for you guys.
We already know it inside, but it helps when like a father calls that out even more, like he sees that.
Yeah.
So that actually gives us boldness. Like not just for me, but for all the other. Like when your father sees something in you and he's saying, go for it.
Right.
That gives you like, okay, I'm gonna go.
Yeah. It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's really what leadership does. So if you have a beautiful daughter like Miracle, who's married to a
Pastor
wonderful,
Becky,
married to wonderful husbands like Matt or Paul or those guys, just make sure that you invest in them and release them into all the fullness that God has, because it'll come back to you probably as the biggest increase in blessing of anybody you can invest in. Yeah.
So even when we look at Jesus' life, he had his 12 disciples, and we like to think that everybody was treated the same. But we know for sure there were 3 that had a little more, you know. Peter's one of the guys that's mentioned quite often as, you know, one of the special out of the 3. And then John, the beloved, right? The guy that, you know, whenever they had dinner, he was like cuddling up to Jesus. His head was on his chest or whatever, which might be weird for some cultures, but in Asia cultures, it makes sense. We can be a little bit more cuddly. You know, there was different levels of relationship. And as leaders, as family, as whatever, you're going to have different levels of relationships in your leadership team. And you cannot make decisions based on other people's perception of those relationships. Otherwise, they'll be hindered.
When you're trying to grow a ministry, you want to attract good people. And you can't have that preferential treatment or whatever it is, which wasn't real, right? It's perceived, but it's perceived by somebody who's suspicious.
Yes.
Right? There's such an underlying worldview or perception of this. You know, I find even like Paul and Barnabas, for example, they started out Barnabas and Saul, right? And they take off in the ministry, and pretty soon you see, well, it's Barnabas and Paul, and then pretty soon Barnabas is the follower, Paul's the leader.
Right.
And then the book of Acts begins to follow Paul and doesn't follow Barnabas.
Right.
And I've heard people say, well, that just shows you that Paul was walking in the will of God and Barnabas wasn't. And I'm like, that's so crazy. The story follows one guy. It doesn't mean the other guy missed it or was anything less at all.
Right.
I mean, there wouldn't be a Paul if it wasn't for Barnabas.
Right. Yeah.
And Barnabas was such an amazing guy. And he's an apostle. He's named an apostle. But people think in those terms that, well, you know, we're kind of here and then you're here.
Right.
And the truth is, there's some things that are going to follow your story that aren't going to follow my story.
Right.
And there's a reason for that, because there's a benefit in that for somebody. And it's like being a mom and a dad, you know, with our 30-some kids. There was a lot of kids that I related to a lot closer, and then there's a lot of other kids that my wife, mom, related to a lot closer, right? And a lot of times I got along better with the girls, and mom got along better with the guys. There's a thing like that in families. And instead of trying to destroy that, right, and fight that, like, why don't we just take advantage of it? The truth is, the boys, they looked up to mom. They looked up to me, but it was different, right? Like, I had to be the tough guy, the hero guy, the guy that's got it all together.
Yes.
But when there's an owie, they're going to run to mom.
Yes. Yeah. Some people you can be more, you know, soft and vulnerable with. Some people you don't have that type of relationship. Some people you can trust with more responsibility. Some people you can't.
Right.
And so I think what we're trying to deal with is, as somebody on the inside, you've got to just take control over your own heart, your own perception, your own perspective of it, and don't allow resentment to grow or criticism to grow.
Yeah.
Because the funny thing is, almost everybody will come from the position of believing that they're not favored.
Right.
Even if everybody else
That's
says you're the favored guy, you know?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And I remember we had, when we were young, one of our brothers that all of the girls thought was like very highly favored by mom. And he would always say, I'm not mom's favorite. And we would just laugh at him and like, yes, you are, you know? But from his perspective, he wasn't at all. And we're like, how could you like not be aware of this, you know? But that's how we feel. Nobody ever feels like they're the ones that are favored. So I think one of the things that we want to just kind of build in our culture here, a family, is just not having a critical heart towards A, your leaders, and B, not having a critical heart towards people that get along well with your leaders. Maybe you want to be that person that has that relationship. Well, then develop it. Right? Don't just sit there and go, oh, it's not fair. My leader always has time for coffee with so-and-so and never with me. Well, when was the last time that you invited them out for coffee? And if they say no, invite them again, because they're probably busy, you know? And if they say no a third time, bring a coffee to the office and say, hey, I got 10 minutes. You want to have a coffee, you know? Don't take it as rejection. And even if you feel like it's meant to be rejection, because it's up to you how you develop your relationships, and it's up to you how you choose to evaluate or judge those relationships.
Yesterday me and mom went to see one of your brothers. We only see him once a year, right? The sweetest guy ever. He's a very dramatic guy, like quite emotional. He's always telling stories about the past. And and his stories always make me and mom look like there's just nobody in the world like us. Like that's his perspective now, right? And I don't know if it was then or not. But anyway, he shared a little story yesterday. He said we were going somewhere, I don't know, we were probably, the whole family was there or whatever, and we had eaten something and bought a few things or whatever. And he said, you just handed me your wallet and told me to go pay everybody, you know. He still remembers that. Because to him, to have dad's wallet, you know, and to go around.
Responsibility.
And the responsibility of the money's there, you're the guy, right? And that kind of thing.
You're the guy I trust.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if I hardly even remember that, but I remember doing that with you guys all the time. I still do it, right?
Yeah.
Hand you my wallet when it's time
I don't want to
pay.
get up, you go pay.
Yeah, right, exactly. For that thing to become this the indication of how much he was favored.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right?
Because that's how he postured his heart.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
He saw himself, whereas another kid could go, Dad doesn't favor me, so-and-so gets to sit on their butt, and now I have to get up and go pay all
Right,
of the
that's
vendors or whatever, right?
so true,
It
yeah.
really has to do with the posture of your heart, and I think that's what we're trying to get at today is you are 100% responsible for the posture of your heart. And so, you know, if you find yourself being critical of other people, it's because there's a critical attitude in your heart, you know? And you're not going to change it by having the people around you change their behavior. We're going to change it by going before God and saying, okay, this attitude in my heart, I don't want to have it. I don't want to look at my family, my team members in a negative light. I want to have a healthy, whole, you know, prosperous outlook towards them, because the whole point of God favoring us and blessing us is that it's meant to open doors for us, right? It's meant to give you more opportunities, you know, and I love like the verse that talks about David, and it talks about how the skillfulness of his hands and the integrity of his heart, and you know, in Proverbs it talks about how skillful hands will bring you before kings. There's an element there where you develop your gift and you do what you need to do so that God puts you in a position of greater influence. But without the integrity of your heart, without that right heart posture, it doesn't matter how blessed you are, you're going to turn it into something sour.
That's right.
Any favor that I have, that from God, from my leaders, my spiritual father, or anyone that God puts in my life, if favor from government, favor from other people, is if it is rooted with the integrity and the trust and the respect, that is a really one is can stay longer. At the same time, the servant heart. When God showed the favor, like when God gave me a favor, and immediately we have to be the way that Jesus has done. Is like he is actually the savior, he is the master, you know, everything. He is the creator, but he always chooses to serve. Yeah, he walks with the favor. It's like everywhere he go, he can multiply things. He can raise the dead. He can make zero to hero. Every single thing he can do. But all we see that he chooses to serve. So the more he is serving, the more we can see is the next level of favor in his life. And same thing we are seeing in our life. And in our team, some of our God has blessed us amazing team members. People, those who are taking an advantage of the favor, and people, those who are choosing to use the favor as a platform to serve people, lift people up. And we see the big difference between. And if anybody's, the people, those who see favor as a status or a privilege, or people, those who see it's an opportunity. God favors me so that I can lift more people up. I can bring more people to God, and I can help more people to help.
As much as we want to see God use us, then that's the fight that we have to keep our heart pure towards our leaders. We don't assume negative things about them. We don't assume negative motives with those that we work with, right? We don't assume negative motives. And it's easy to do, especially when you're dealing with cross-culture, cross-language, cross-country, right? And there's things that happen all the time where it's, you know, it'll be funny, like little things. Just things with food or how you're sitting at the table or whatever. And one culture will think it's one way, and another culture will think, man, that is so rude. Like, I can't believe you're doing that. And the other side has like no clue, right? But we put on other people a motive. We put an attention on them because we want to read from them the fact that they know what's right and what's wrong, and they're choosing to do what's wrong because they're disrespecting me, because they're belittling me. And whether that's true or not is actually not the issue. The issue is, what are you going to do with your heart in that situation? Are you going to go, I don't understand it, I'm going to assume the best, or even if they mean the worst, it doesn't matter, right? Like, why not keep my heart right, build the relationship with that person, and then maybe encourage them. You know, next time, don't put your feet on the table or whatever it is the issue is.
The nation like India, especially in TLCI, we have a 25 more. Right now, currently, we have more than 25 states of India. And we divided according to the vision and the call that God puts us in 6 regionals. So what we naturally see in the beginning of every semester, because new family member, like new students come, So automatically tendency is like a my state, my reason. And so that is one of our hardest fight, and keeping the vision in the front line. If I come from Punjab, and if there is already existing Punjab students, as very quickly we'll go to that person. And if I'm a senior Punjab student and a newly Punjab student come, if he is struggling in English, he will be the first person, that I will be meeting that. But we have to fight for that, because if we just allow that, it's going to bring the division after division. So all Punjabis are different, all Kashmiri people are different, Northeast is different, South. So once the division comes in this way, because it all starts with the favoritism. It's like, oh, my people, my language. And we are missing the ground. So right from the beginning onwards, we fight is that we don't move, like when we help somebody or when we need to help somebody, we don't go by my Punjabi, my regional. We go by this is my God-given person. So we don't talk about Punjabi or Northeast or South India. We talk about this is my person that God gives me.
To do that in a practical sense is just always act like you're the favorite.
Yes.
Yeah. like take that assumption that you're the favorite. I mean, we do that with God, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Like I just assume that I'm his favorite, and I tell people that too. And some people go like, "Yeah, you can't be the favorite." Well, yeah, I can if I want to be.
Yeah. Well, I think there's actually kind of only really two. Either people feel like they're highly favored by God, or they're not seen by God at all.
Maybe, yeah.
Right. And both of those have to do with your own heart towards God.
We can't just only wait for somebody favors. God can turn everything. Favorite word is where you are slapped, there you will be clapped. So that's one of my favorite words to speak, because sometimes when somebody is speaking negative to us, we try to get the claps from them by explaining. And no, God, you just focus on God and what He is calling us to do. So I have my sticky statement: as long as we build the people for Christ, nothing stops us. No persecution, no favoritism, or no comparison. So it's just like as my dad, like Dr. Raul says, guard your heart. That is my most powerful weapon over the years, keeping me healthy and stronger.
So think about that in your life. Think about the favor that God has given you, and how you can make people feel like they're favored. It's not so much about attracting favor. We get that, right? We've got that. But to be a giver of favor, and to let people know that they're special, and there's no wrong in that. You don't have to be careful about letting people know that they're special because somebody else might be offended. To do that, for me, what I do is I just look at people and say, okay, what is the gift here? What is it that they're really good at? What is it they're really strong at? And what is it that they need encouragement in? Especially, when you're the leader at some level of influence, you can say some little thing to someone and they just brighten up. They just light right up, right? And you can tell it makes their day. And sometimes they'll go on that for 3 or 4 days.
And when a leader puts a tighter standard on your life, instead of looking at that as disfavor, like, why am I, being asked to do this and somebody else isn't?
Right.
We need to change our mindset too and be like, I'm being entrusted with this level of excellence, or the standard of excellence, or the standard of productivity.
That's right.
Because I used to sometimes get annoyed when I would look at my workload and go, why don't other people have that workload? And then it hit me one day. It's like, wow, I'm actually trusted with a lot of stuff. And instead of seeing it as a problem, it's actually the favor of God on my life that I'm actually trusted with more.
Yeah.
So take it in stride. If your leaders are putting more on you, it's the favor of God.
Right. So think of it, you get to carry Dad's wallet, today.
Amen.
That's a special thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it. Enjoy it.
Amen.